Be blessed by the divine. Welcome to this series of shows that we are going to do on type of food that we should eat and why we should eat the type of food that we are going to recommend. For this show, I'm going to invite Dr. Achyuthan Eswar, a naturopathy and a yoga physician, trained and certified and has been practicing this for several years now. And he has cured and reversed diabetes and cured and helped people recover from cancer and cancer treatments, infertility patients, blood pressure patients, heart patients, and so on and so forth. I think his pedigree will speak for himself as to what he has achieved in his life with just diet, with just natural diet. And as meditators, I would like you to listen to this and see if you have any questions, and feel free to comment on this video, subscribe on this video, and follow this and share this with other friends of yours so that a lot of other people can listen to this and benefit from this. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask in the next show, feel free to comment so that we can use that as a basis for the next show. This is going to be a series of shows that we're going to start with Dr. Achyuthan Eswar. Welcome to the show, Dr. Achyuthan Eswar.
Thank you so much.
I would like to ask you a few questions about non-vegetarianism and meditation. We are all meditators here, so we would like to learn from you as to why meditators should not be eating meat, fish, etc.
Great. So animal foods, meat, fish, eggs, which we generally classify under animal foods, they come with three problems. One is the impact on health. Second is the impact on our mental health. And the third is the conflict with the morality that we try to practice as meditators, especially as Kundalini yoga meditators. And I'd like to discuss about all three of these things. But first, I'd like to expand our definition of animal foods a little to really encompass all the different animal foods that are there. Right? When you tell somebody that a non-vegetarian food, for example, the first thing they think of is meat or fish. There are some who consider eggs as vegetarian, some who consider it as non-vegetarian, and nobody considers dairy products as non-vegetarian foods. So I'd like to move away from that word and instead choose to call it animal foods, which is so much more clear. It's so much easier to understand and simpler. When you say animal foods, that means food that comes from animals instead of coming from plants. It's as simple as that. So that includes meat, fish, eggs, and dairy products, which means milk, curds, ghee, butter, buttermilk, cheese, paneer, cream, etc. And if you want to take it a step further, processed foods as well, which are not just packaged foods or junk foods, but also many culprits that stay hidden in our kitchen, like oil, sugar, jaggery, white rice, maida, rava, and alcohol. Now, if I were to ask somebody to ideally stop consuming all of these foods, the next question will be what to eat, because this is what we eat every day, right? The answer to that is what I'd like to discuss in today's session, and the answer is whole plant foods. It doesn't mean that you need to restrict yourself, because when you tell somebody that we need to avoid particular kind of food, that's all they're thinking of. They're thinking of, oh, I can't eat this, and they're not thinking of, wow, I can eat all of these foods. So when we shift from reducing our diet to the abundance of foods that we can eat and enjoy for better physical and mental health, the journey becomes so much easier. So which one would you like to talk about first? Physical health, mental health, or the morality question?
Now let's start with whichever is comfortable with. Let's start with the physical one, because that seems to be the prime most aspect. Because as meditators, we would like to maintain our body. Our journey is self-realization. Journey is mukti, samadhi, and therefore we would like to allow our physical body as a vehicle to live long and live healthily. So let's start with the physical dimension, please.
Wonderful. If you look at the top causes of death in India, the number one cause of death is ischemic heart disease, heart attacks. And if you look at the top risk factors for death in India, you'll find that the number one risk factor is not, it's not depression, it's not smoking, it's not alcohol, but it's rather the food that we eat. Our food, what we eat every day, is responsible for killing off more people than any other risk factor in our country. Heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, asthma, PCOS, autoimmune conditions like psoriasis, all of these have a very strong diet related component and are arise from eating the kinds of food that lead to these diseases. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, he outlines the first two steps as yama and niyama, and the third step as asana. I'd like to talk about that when it comes to physical health. The definition of an asana, it's not about being able to contort your body into as many postures as possible, but rather the definition of an asana is being able to perform any posture without any difficulty whatsoever. That is, without any effort. If you sit down, you should be able to sit for as long as you want without any effort, effortlessly. If you want to stand, you should be able to stand effortlessly. You want to work, you should be able to work effortlessly. You should not have physical pain. You should not have physical disease, which bogs you down. For example, if you're diabetic, there's only so long that you can work before you need to eat and take your medications, take your insulin. You never know when it's going to go high, when it's going to go low. There are difficulties that you face. If you have back pain, you can't sit straight and meditate for a very long time. If you have knee pain, you can't sit down and meditate, which is essential for the next few steps, right? Once you achieve physical health, physical fitness, then you'll be able to move on to the next step. You can withdraw your, you control your breathing, that is pranayama, because when you sit down, meditate, you close your eyes, your breath is still the only thing that you're consciously moving around. Everything else is still. So you control your breath, you can't stop breathing. Right? You control your breath, pranayama. You withdraw senses inwards, pratyahara. You focus on one single thing, like the life force in Kundalini Yoga, dharana, until the mind starts focusing on the life force by itself without any effort from you, dhyana. And then you reach a state of samadhi when you realize that you, the object that you're focusing on, and the action of focusing are all one and the same. That's samadhi. The first prerequisite after yama and niyama is asana, physical health and physical fitness. If we're not healthy, we simply won't be able to achieve the rest of the steps. So that's very, very important to achieve. Unfortunately, today in India, the top causes of death contain, most of them are preventable, treatable, and even reversible lifestyle diseases. This means that we are, consciously or unconsciously bringing these diseases onto ourselves. And unfortunately, that's what's happening in our country. For example, I had a patient a couple of days back who said that, I'm calling you because I have been diagnosed with diabetes a couple of weeks back. My entire family is diabetic, so I knew it's just a matter of time. But that's not the truth. Even if the rest of your family has diabetes, you don't need to be diabetic. You only develop the disease. Even let's say I'm carrying the genes for diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease, right? I will only develop those diseases. I have a high risk of developing those diseases only if I make mistakes in my diet and lifestyle. If I eat unhealthy foods, animal or processed foods, then I develop.
So, may I interrupt you for a second, please? So, you started with focusing on health dimension of animal products.
Yes.
So, if you can elaborate a little bit about why animal products are not so very harmonious to our health, I would appreciate that.
Sure. Now, as we've evolved through the millennia from the great apes to human beings, our diet has been composed of primarily whole plant foods. If you go even 2 generations back, the amount of animal foods we were consuming, whether it's from meat, fish, eggs, or dairy products or processed foods, was limited to about 5 to 10% of our caloric intake. And that seems to be about the limit. Our body can handle damage. Our body can heal itself, but only to a small limit. In recent times, when we've increased our intake of animal foods, when we drink milk every day, when we eat curd rice every day, we eat meat multiple times a week, our body is not capable of handling that amount of damage, and that results in lifestyle diseases. So on a cellular level, what happens is that so different animals are created differently. For example, if you go to a lion and you try feeding a lion only whole plant foods, the lion is not going to survive because its body needs the nutrients that are only found in animal foods, and it is not suited to consuming plant foods. Same thing goes for a cat. Cats, for example, are carnivorous animals, whereas dogs are omnivorous animals. You can feed a dog a plant-based diet all of its life, no problem at all, be absolutely healthy. But if you feed a cat the same diet, the cat is going to go out, hunt for a mouse, and then give it to you as a gift, right? So cats are, they're natural carnivores. And interestingly, this is also seems to be reflected in their personalities. They say you take care of a cat, you take care of a dog, it'll come to the conclusion that you are God. You take care of a cat, it'll come to the conclusion that it is God. They're aloof, they're not very social creatures, but dogs are. And we probably will come to this
So,
when we
could you focus more on the human beings aspect of it? Can you tell us what really happens to the human body when we consume meat?
yes. When we look at evolution, which is the point I was making, we find that we have consumed whole plant foods throughout our evolution. This means that our body is best suited to consuming whole plant foods. When we shift away from this, number one is we don't get the nutrients that we need. Number two, we get too much of the nutrients that we don't need, and we end up, loading our body with uh, um, some nutrients that even act as toxins for the body. For example, cholesterol. Cholesterol is one nutrient that we all know about, we've all heard about. Cholesterol comes from animal foods. It is not made by plants. The term cholesterol quite literally means animal sterol. A similar compound that's found in plants is called ergosterol. It's not even called cholesterol. So cholesterol is made by animals like us. When we eat food, cholesterol is made in our liver, and it's essential. We need it in order to build our body. The membranes of all our cells are made using cholesterol. The problem is when we consume cholesterol externally, when we put it into the body, or when we consume too much of processed food and our body makes too much of it, that results in a higher risk of disease. High cholesterol has been linked to a higher rates of heart disease, high rates of hypertension, of even diseases like breast cancer have been linked with a high cholesterol level in the blood. Not just cholesterol, but other compounds. For example, when you cook meat and fish or eggs, when you cook it at higher temperatures, when you grill it, you form what are called AGEs, advanced glycation end products, which is the compound that's responsible for browning of food. And that has been linked with higher rates of cancer. When we consume animal foods habitually, there are certain bacteria that are there in our intestine which eat compounds found in animal foods. They convert them to other compounds, which then increase cancer risk in our body. So, through many different complex mechanisms, our intake of animal foods increases our risk for diabetes, for hypertension, for obesity, and heart disease. They did a study on the Seventh Day Adventists in the US, where they took, so Seventh Day Adventists are a sect of Christians who happen to follow a very healthy lifestyle. They pray for, regularly. They do a lot of exercise, and even the non-vegetarians eat very little meat. Right. So what they did was they split them. They took tens of thousands of them. They split them into groups that ate non-vegetarians who ate all kinds of animal foods, pesco vegetarians who ate only fish but no other meat, lacto-ovo vegetarians who ate only milk and eggs but no meat, and vegans who did not consume any animal foods. What they found when they compared these groups was a stepwise drop in diabetes risk from one group to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Stepwise drop in hypertension, stepwise drop in obesity rate, stepwise drop in BMI, basically. Right. The only group that had a normal BMI were the vegans.
The vegans.
Yes.
So, what are vegans different from the whole plant-based, whole plant food that you talked about?
Yes. So the approach is different. For example, a whole food plant-based diet is a diet that will give you better health. A vegan lifestyle is a non-violent lifestyle. Essentially, that's what it means. The veganism is based on the principle of ahimsa. Right? It just so happens that the healthiest diet for you is also the most compassionate diet and is also the most environmentally friendly diet. So happen to eat similar types of food across all of them, but there are number of differences. For example, if you only follow veganism and don't follow a plant-based diet, you can eat coke and chips every day and still die of a heart attack. If you only follow a plant-based diet and not follow veganism, you can still pay for cows to be slaughtered and made into wallets and belts. If you ask me, the best thing to do is both.
Okay, so when you talk about not eating animal products, you mentioned that no meat, no fish, no milk. That is any kind of milk-based products. Is no honey also.
That's right.
I thought honey is healthy. I thought ghee is healthy. Ayurveda doctors, for instance, recommend ghee. Why don't we eat ghee? Ghee
Sure.
is butter, right? It's basically cooked butter, as you can say.
Sure. There is a long-standing tradition in India of having a bottle of ghee in every household, right? There is, but what we need to do is we need to go back and look at the source of this tradition. Why did this come into play in the first place? Why? If we answer that question, then it becomes a lot clearer to us. If you go back to the time the Vedas were written, the first and the oldest Veda, the Rig Veda, does not mention the cow as a holy animal anywhere. The
Oh, I
second Veda,
see. Okay,
yes,
I didn't know this at all.
okay. So the second Veda onwards, the cow is suddenly elevated to the status of a goddess. Now, let's ask ourselves, why did they do this? Why did they make the cow holy from the second Veda onwards? A possible answer could be to protect the cow. Especially in our country, you want to protect anything, you make it holy, right? Then people think twice before abusing it. So why would they need to protect something? Because they needed it. It was required for some reason. And that reason may just happen to be food insecurity. When you go back to that time, it was a time when you quite literally did not know if you're going to have enough food to eat tomorrow. And incidentally, this is something that is still in play today. It's not so far back. I mean, you go to your mother's house or any of your older relatives' homes, and you waste food on your plate. You're not going to get away with it. You have to finish eating what's on your plate, right? Why? It's not like we don't have enough food at home. It's not like we don't have enough food in the kitchen today for most of us. But this tradition has come from a time when we quite literally did not have enough food to eat. Now, at this point in time, when you don't have food to eat, your mind goes crazy, quite literally. Your values, your morals, all of that goes out of the window. I'm sure each one of us have experienced one meal getting delayed and the irritation that causes. There's even a word for it called hangry, which is a combination of hungry and angry. Imagine going without food for 4 days, 5 days, 10 days. And by the way, this is even today considered normal in certain tribal areas in the world. Going without food for 4 days, yeah, that's fine. I'll have food the next day. I'll figure it out. I'll find something to eat. So in times like that, people started hunting. When you look at the term hunter gatherers, right? We see cave paintings of people hunting animals, killing them, and eating them. But that was only contributing about 10% of our diet in most places and most times in history. 90% came from gathering. The 10% of hunting happened because we didn't get enough food to eat at that point in time. So
Perhaps in colder regions or in desert regions.
sure, colder regions, desert regions, even in India, when droughts and famines and
Droughts.
yeah,
Of
droughts
course,
and
when there is
famines.
no rain, what do you do?
Yeah,
The forest is dried up and there's nothing to eat, and you need to kill something and eat. Correct.
absolutely. And this was the time when morals and values were becoming an important part of Indian society. When yamas, niyamas, the first yama, the first rule of yoga is ahimsa. You start with non-violence. That's the
That's right.
first
So
rule.
I really want to understand a little bit more about the physical dimension before we go to the spiritual dimension. Okay. So the physical dimension, there are a couple of questions that I have. If we don't eat meat or fish or eggs or anything related to animal, then how do we get protein?
So think about this. Which are the biggest, strongest animals in the world? You have the hippopotamus, rhinoceros, giraffes, gorillas, um, the Indian bison,
Elephants.
elephants, all of which are huge, bulky muscles, the strongest animals, and none of them eat meat. They
Oh,
all consume plant foods.
yeah, that's right. That's
Yes,
right.
it is extremely easy. In fact, all protein is initially made by plants. The protein
Hmm.
that you get from animal foods is the protein that those animals have eaten from plant foods. So all we need to do is just eat enough plants and we will more than meet our protein intake. In fact, the researchers studied this. They took non-vegetarians, vegetarians, and vegans and just documented what do people eat on a daily basis, normal, regular diets, and how much protein that consists of. And they found that you might think that vegetarians and vegans might be on the borderline or even lower, but in fact, even vegans were on average consuming 70% excess protein on a daily basis, more than what they need. Right?
Oh,
So
lovely. So there is enough protein from the plant food. So I understand that. Can you name a few things where we get protein from plant source?
sure, in fact, the highest protein contents are found in dals, in pulses and legumes. You have your tur dal, urad dal, the chana dal, and then you have your masoor dal, your chana, your rajma, um, tofu, soya beans. Any kind of lentil, pulse, or legume has a high protein content. Even grains
Lovely.
like rice and whole wheat, millets, you have ragi, jowar, bajra, green leafy vegetables, and certain other vegetables also. Nuts and seeds, for example, have high level of protein. So, protein is simply one nutrient that you don't even need to think about twice. All you
Oh,
need to do is
lovely.
eat
Lovely.
enough food.
Okay, okay. Why are you against, or why are you not advising eggs?
Sure. So eggs are animal foods. They are zero fiber. They are low in phytonutrients. So when we consume eggs, immediately for the next few hours, our body goes into a state of what's called postprandial oxidative stress, which means that our arteries get damaged, our cells and tissues start getting damaged because we have consumed food that is giving us energy without giving us the nutrients we need to keep ourselves healthy. So yes, we get protein from it. We get uh, fats and other nutrients from it, but it also gives us a higher risk of disease. That's why we don't recommend eggs to consume.
Okay, I think I have pretty much asked you questions related to the physical dimension of non-vegetarian. Let's now jump into the mental dimension before we go into the spiritual. We'll keep spiritual a little later. Why is it wrong to eat meat and fish products, animal products, from a mental perspective? What does it do to our mind?
Sure. So the interestingly, diseases like depression have been linked to a higher intake of animal foods, in particular with fish. What happens is when we consume animal foods, the level of inflammation inside the brain that seems to be increasing. That causes a higher risk of depression, which is responsible, which is the primary motivator behind suicide risk, which is one of the top 10 killers in India today. And it is, I think, the top cause of death among youth in our country today, it's suicide. And that's caused by depression, which in turn, the risk is increased by consuming animal foods.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know about this at all. So great. So let's move to the spiritual dimension. So tell us how, what is morally, ethically, spiritually wrong in eating animal food, except that we should not kill it. that you already touched upon it. There's something ethically wrong in killing an animal. What's wrong in eating a dead animal, for instance, from a spiritual dimension?
Sure. So the definition of morality, as Swamiji, as Vedatri Maharishi put it, is to perform your actions in a way that you don't harm yourself or others, physically or mentally, now or in the future, right? Let's analyze it using that lens, right? You, I mean, take any example. Take the example of meat, right? When you eat meat, am I harming myself? Yes, I am, by increasing my risk of disease, by causing damage to my cells. Am I harming others? Definitely, I harm the animal because I pay for the animal to be killed, even if I'm not killing the animal myself. I pay for the slaughterhouse worker to slit that animal's throat. Uh, Slaughterhouse workers, for example, have a high rate of domestic violence because the entire day, their entire job, day in and day out, is to kill animals. Imagine doing that the whole day and then going back home to your spouse and children, right? That's all is there in your mind. It's an extremely stressful job. So I harm others, I harm myself. Do I harm myself physically? Yes, I increase my risk of heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, strokes, and obesity. Do I harm myself mentally? Yes, I increase my risk of depression. Do I harm, uh, you know, of course, the animals physically, mentally as well, and the slaughterhouse workers who I'm paying? And do I harm them and myself now? Yes, by eating it now for the next 6 hours, my body is going to go to a state of worse health. And in the future as well, where I'm going to suffer from an increased risk of diseases like cancer, which I definitely do not want. So, it's a big cross mark in all six categories of morality.
I understand. What about the spiritual dimension?
What would you like to know?
What happens to our Kundalini Shakti? What happens to our life force, meditative power? What happens to our meditation capacity when we eat non-vegetarian food?
Sure. So just from an experience standpoint, when you consume a meal that contains any kind of animal or processed foods, the quality of your meditation immediately after that meal you'll be able to perceive is a lot less than before. But when you consume a meal with whole plant foods, you're able to meditate much better. You feel lighter, your focus is better, your concentration is better, and the quality of your meditation is better, and therefore the outcome of the meditation is also better. In the long run, what does meditation give us? It gives us better stability of mind, it gives us mental peace, it gives us physical health, all of which get compromised when we consume animal foods or in the long run.
Sure, sure. I can completely understand what you're saying. Swamiji also used to say that when an animal gets slaughtered, it goes through torture, and the torturous experience becomes an imprint in the flesh of the animal. And a person who eats that animal's flesh, which has gone through a torturous experience, then absorbs some of these imprints, and then over a period of time their genetic center may get contaminated, and they would start to acquire the state of mind of that particular animal, and therefore may reflect that animal's behaviors in their regular experience or their regular behavior. So I just thought I should just add that to what you just now added, what you just now said. So you have covered the physical dimension, the mental dimension, the ethical and the spiritual dimension also. So tell me, as meditators, if we need to follow the whole food plant-based diet that you are talking about, is there a website or a course that you have exclusively for our followers, our meditators?
Sure, we have an online course on our website, nutritionscience.in. It's called the Plant-Based Diet Masterclass. So, when I get patients who come to me for various diseases, I used to talk to them for 3 hours to explain the entire thing, because it's not just like a prescription. It's not as if I can say, okay, from today, don't eat animal or processed food, eat whole plant foods, and you'll be able to treat your diabetes. It doesn't work, because it's a lifestyle change. We need to learn about it. That's the first step. So we put together an online course where we have what to eat and what not to eat. How do you make the shift from unhealthy foods to healthy whole plant foods? How to cook, how to approach cooking. How do you cook without oil, for example? How do you make curd rice and ice cream without dairy products? How do you make pakoras without frying it in oil? All of these we teach. Plus, how to meet all of your nutritional requirements and get the best protection from disease by planning out your daily meals with the best blend of different food groups. We also have live sessions every week where we answer questions one-on-one, and we have support groups where you can interact with so many hundreds of people who have already made the change and get inspired for yourself and your family.
Is it a paid course or a free course?
It is a paid course. We also have free courses available where you can start making the change and learn about it. And we have plenty of recipes available on our website for free.
Sure. So I will provide the link for that particular website in the video of what you're just now watching, and also in the description of the videos. You can go ahead and feel free to sign up for the free course. And the last time I checked your free course, and I thought there was something about 11,000 and odd subscribers you have on that free course.
That's right.
Very nice. Excellent. So I would like to keep this conversation with you going over a series of videos that I would like to do for our followers on the YouTube and the Facebook and the LinkedIn channels that we have. So the next class, I would like to learn a little bit more about. I would like you to teach us about whole food plant-based diet. What is it? What is this whole food all about? What is a plant-based diet all about? And how do you define these things? What do you choose the food? And what does it really mean for a human being? What do you mean by the diet called whole food plant-based diet? Is it a very strict system? Is it a flexible system? Are the choices very narrow? Are there substitutes for different kinds of meat products and egg products and fish products that you have in plant-based diet system, etc.? So I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you on this, Dr. Achyuthan.
Sounds great. Looking forward as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being there. Thank you very much for coming on this show. Thank you all for being there and inspiring us to continue to do this for the benefit of everyone in the world. And this is an education session. There is absolutely no commercial interest in this whole initiative that we have. And if you have any questions to ask Dr. Achyuthan Eswar in the next show, feel free to comment on this video so that we can use that as a basis for the next show. And do subscribe to this particular channel and do share this video to your friends and relatives so that a lot of people can benefit from this. And definitely do like this video so that more people can also come and follow this and enjoy good health, long life, enough wealth, peace, and prosperity and wisdom. I will see you in the next video session. Be blessed by the divine. Good luck.